This movie is a game changer. I would establish it. I'm going to get a little more into it when I get into my review. But if you want to know where Michael Mann and Christopher Nolan got their inspiration from, it starts with this movie.
I would even argue a few years later with William Friedkin.
Yeah. Or John Frankenheimer doing Ronin. This is Bullitt, the game changer that kind of defined what you need for your summer blockbuster films.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching, and for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. Heck yeah, we got a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals, some good content, and an opportunity to tell some movies we can review in the future. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics reviews as well as ours. Check out Kyle's webpage.
GoatFilmReviews.com.
For new release reviews, right? You do new movies too, as well as old. And today we're talking about the 1968 classic Bullitt. Bullitt.
San Francisco Police Lieutenant Frank Bullitt has been tasked to keep mobster Johnny Ross safe so he can stand as a witness and give evidence on the organization. When an attempt is made on Ross's life, Bullitt tries to find out who is responsible and who had the information about Ross's secure whereabouts.
Directed by Peter Yates, this is kind of after his success from a previous film. He did Summer Holiday, which is kind of just a vessel for Cliff Richard's career. He did Robbery, which is a version of a Great Train Robbery. That was a huge success, and from that, there's like, what project would you like to do next? Then, nothing really on the table until Steve McQueen recruits him to do his next project, which is Bullitt.
Yeah, and actually it came from Alan Trustman first, who suggested it to Steve McQueen to watch the movie. Alan Trustman was the screenwriter of the film, the first one, who also did the Thomas Crown Affair in a movie called Hit.
Which Steve McQueen is kind of a miss for that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. But they'd kind of gotten a rapport and stuff, and Trustman said, you got to check out this movie Robbery. And it's just like the light bulb went off in McQueen's head. Oh yeah, I need to get this guy for my film. He was kind of like, we talked about, he was kind of like the Tom Cruise of his day, where he was picking his own projects,
Yeah, so everything kind of, this is Steve McQueen's vessel, it's his baby, it's his production, and he's out recruiting a crew. Peter Yates accepted the challenge because Hollywood had this stigma at the time, and I think it's in the Wikipedia page, but I already know that British don't do action very well. It's very clumsy. So he took up the challenge that I can demonstrate I can do action, and I'll use Steve McQueen for it.
Yeah. And very much the film features one major action sequence. Most of the film's actually
quiet,
detailless. There's not a lot that's actually going on in the film. It's just little moments, little like slow piecing away, and then it's like almost like he was like, well, I'm going to show off the action at one time,
You're going to amp it up, and then the music and the fanfare and all that stuff. Peter Yates came from directing, kind of circumnavigating. He was assistant director for many people. Mark Robson, I listed down, but also he also did assistant director for J. Lee Thompson in Guns N' Roses.
Two directors we've covered shockingly often.
So almost kind of like Michael Mann, he worked on camera assistant kind of for many years before he actually vesseled and was in charge of directing himself. I think he's one of the few directors, Peter Yates, who knows how to operate a camera. I think when he gets a cinematographer, he knows exactly what he can, resolutions and frames and everything, what he wants in a film.
Yeah.
Kind of like Michael Mann and Christopher Nolan. You better know camera because they can speak camera language.
Yeah.
I know there's some directors that I don't know camera. I direct my films. I trust my cinematographer to know what that. He gives me all the technical stuff. I go, just make it look good.
Yeah, I mean that's the point of the cinematographer in many ways, and it's kind of like, what was it Kevin Smith always talked about when he got onto a set? They'd be like, "What do you want?" He's like, "Well, I want like a this."
Yeah,
and it's like,
so, but
I don't really know it either.
But Peter Yates, much like Nolan, unless you make Michael Mann, they understand camera very well, technically very well, and I think because of those two men understood what Peter Yates is the inspiration, and I'll get a little more into the as we move forward. Cinematographer is Will A. Cracker. Fracker. He's not really well known as cinematography. People talk about this movie, don't really talk so much of the cinematography. He did get a nomination for cinematography.
Yeah.
But he invented this car that was not. I mean, obviously people used cars before, but it's almost like a go-kart racing car where the cameraman sat with and drove with the cars also.
Yeah.
So the inventions as well as the technique of lighting, I really enjoy it. I don't know why it didn't get the accolades, but obviously in the late 60s, you've seen this refreshment.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing, and the claim to fame for the film, of course, being its big chase sequence, which is the reason why it got its best film editing Academy Award win.
Yeah.
It's commonly attributed that like the movie's well edited overall, but it's that scene in particular where it won the award. Yeah, the cinematography, like the thing about it is that again, the camera's very stationary outside of that moment. The camera is not very. It's not very vocal. It's not very moving. He's letting the actors kind of have their moment because they are. Steve McQueen tends to shoot a little scenery, and if you get Robert Vaughn in a movie, prepare to have your scenery.
There's
destroyed.
one flashy scene, and it's when they pull over the highway and they have their talk in the tall grass. It's flashy. It seems pretentious.
That's fair.
And that's the one thing I take away from it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, William Fraker did 1941, which I don't think is a very good movie.
Yes, because you went out to work with Spielberg too.
You know,
yeah,
it looks nice, I guess. So that's one thing for him. And he also did a movie called War Games, which again, not a great movie, but it looks nice. So like you can always kind of attribute that to him.
He did cinematography at Tombstone. The person he worked with is the dad of Dad's
Cosmatos.
yeah,
I can't remember the George is the dad, I think.
Yeah,
George.
Cosmatos. And his son would go on to make Mandy. So yeah, all these network because William A. Fraker did Tombstone as well. So you have this very. I was kind of weird because this is during the flower power, peace and love, and you have this high octane muscle car action film. Right in, I mean, this came out there almost a year before Woodstock.
Yeah.
So you have this very, this is San Francisco where the flower power kind of started, and you have this high octane action beat 'em up masculine movie coming out.
Yeah, I think they knew that because it did seem like the marketing. They said very much that the marketing was kind of changed so that it wouldn't be such a cop drama. Like specifically, they called out on some of the posters where they said like he's not an ordinary cop; he's just out looking for the man who shot his partner or something like that. Like they kind of like lessen the fact that he's a police officer and more that he is a good man who is kind of on the outs. And he doesn't really do anything like during this time period. We had things like The French Connection. We had things later on like Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Movies where the cop part is not always the nicest part. They're not the good guys in a lot of ways. They're kind of cruel and hateful people. He wasn't really though. Frank Bullitt very regularly is kind of a white knight.
Yeah. So edited by Frank P. Keller. He won for editing. Mm-hmm. And the juicy parts is the action, how they get edited. Mm-hmm. And it got nominated for Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Robert Vaughn, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, and Best Sound, which also won Best Sound. Best Sound is kind of a tricky thing. People really don't look for technical terms of Best Sound. But I understand it gets Best Sound because there's a lot of quiet in this movie. And then right when you need the action, you get the boom boom. So it's almost that anticipation that you're waiting for.
When I think this was also a story that was behind the scenes too, where the film didn't have a lot of on-set sound, and that almost all of the film sound is recorded and done in post.
Yeah.
So I think maybe amongst sound people, that's how you get a nomination, is that people all hear like, did you hear that so and so had to put all the sound in by themselves, like because the sound people are the ones who nominate the films, so they know the story of like, wow, that would have been a lot of hard work. And I would argue that most people looking for it can't figure out how they did that because the sound is so integral to the film. It's not like a blow your mind sound, but when you know the details behind it, it's an accomplishment.
It's kind of weird that this is made 10 years after Vertigo. Vertigo was 58, and this is 68. So and the Vertigo was made in San Francisco as well. And it's almost kind of, you have Jimmy Stewart, who's car chasing a woman, but it's slow and pacing. But this we're going further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at something like Vertigo, too, Vertigo was very on set. There was a lot of moments where you can tell that that's not really there. Whereas there was a predominant.
This is 100% on location.
Location, yeah. The only times that they ever had to do anything where it wasn't on 100% was that they needed the pickup shot here. But it's like 99.999%. These people are standing out there talking.
Yeah. They rented out a hospital, a religion hospital. They actually hired some of the staff that worked there to be in the movie. So a lot of them are nurses and doctors in professional real life, and they hired them to be in the movie as well. So it's kind of neat that you have this. What kind? I don't really say it started the documentary style that came in the '70s, where you're using the French Connection, because this is not really documentary style. The camera's not part of it, so like, where's the action? The camera's always set, knows where the action's going to be. Everybody's on their mark, which is not really what part of French Connection. French Connection's a very documentary style film.
Yeah.
This is very intentionally shot. So, but it's on location and in front of you. Yeah.
I think part of it is the connection between this one and the French Connection and a lot of other procedurals that we would see during the time period, like Mannix and what have you, would be it's very much about its beat style. You know, you are following him as he uncovers the clues. You are following, and that's something that French Connection shares. Its style is more documentary, like this is a man with a camera following Gene Hackman, whereas this film is more like relaxed on that. But there is still that beatnik part of it, where it's like you're following, you're uncovering. It's almost like you're the other agent.
It's that
in the
slow,
room.
steady pace of boom.
Yeah,
boom,
but I think that's why it is that you feel like you are his partner, looking for the crime, even though it's not presented in that way. You feel like you're searching for the details as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that would carry over, and that's why we wouldn't see this kind of thing wouldn't happen as much in films, because I do think TV picked up the slack. This is the kind of movie that could have been a show.
Yeah. My favorite scene in the whole movie. I love it. I own it. Of course I own it. But I get a kick out of that when the action intensifies for the car chase. The one guy actually puts his seatbelt on.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's just teaching people to be safe. I mean,
right.
If you're gonna kill someone in a car crash.
At this late '60s, nobody put their seatbelt on. Nobody did. Nobody did.
Lit a cigarette.
Right.
Kicked into 80.
Right. I mean, I'm sure if you went to, like I shared this story, I had a family member who went to the dealership in the early '60s, and he asked, "Does this car have seatbelts?" He goes, "What, are you going to race the teenagers? Oh, we got a race car driver over here." Right. And that was the only reason you wore your seatbelt, is because, I'm going to go heavy. And it's showed in the movie.
Maybe that was an after effect, because initially this car chase scene that was so iconic, where they were planning on having them drive like 75 to 80 miles an hour, and they ended up going about 110 at some points.
It's a dramatic effect.
After the fact, they were like, we should probably show them buckling
in. Right. It's a dramatic effect of, this is going to get intense. I need to put my belt on.
But part of it, too, is I think, it could have just been, too, when they actually showed the crash scene of the car flipped over, these guys are clearly buckled in, because they're hanging from the vehicle upside down on fire. So maybe it was the idea of, like, we can't have them escape. They can't crawl out.
I think it's for dramatic, that all of a sudden this is going to be intense. Time to put your belt on.
Yeah.
Because even Steve McQueen, because he would have, like, the double harness, like the race car drivers? Yeah. Up next is, of course, our review of the game changer film, Bullitt. We've seen this many times before. My God, I watch this almost once a year. Definitely would be required film viewing in my film class. Another thing I continue to keep saying, and the reason
your film class is getting really long, Nick. All right, at this point you're just teaching college.
It's a two-year process. For one things, I call it the game changer. Number one, every action movie now in the summer has to have a car chase scene in it. It's almost required. If you don't, you don't have a car chase scene, you don't have a movie, especially for the summer. Even though this came in October, it's always the thing of how you can have a car chase in a movie. All the Batman movies have it.
Yep.
Superhero movies have it.
We have a whole franchise of fast cars being furious.
Right, yeah. Also, the technique of on-set locations, but the lighting, the blue hues, and very much the aesthetics, all we use for Michael Mann. You go see this movie, and then you watch Thief, or you see this movie, and then you go see, like, Inception. You understand on-set location as well as the aesthetic they're going for.
Yeah, there's really a trickle down influence to all these kinds of films, because you wouldn't have a Man without this, you wouldn't have a Nolan without Man, and now you have all these people that are trying to be Christopher Nolan. There's a movie called Hypnotic that came out where Robert Rodriguez is trying to be Christopher Nolan, so it just keeps on going forever and ever.
The airport scene at the end, there's a reason why they're at the airport in the movie Heat.
Yeah. Or there's you could even maybe make the argument that Carlito's Way, with the chase scene going to the subway, was kind of their subway version of the airport.
Right.
There's that carryover kind of thing to it, where I think the biggest film that I see influence from Bullitt actually is Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof, and you can see specific even cinematography homage to this film, because one thing that this film does almost accidentally, but something that I really love about it, is that the camera can't keep up with the chase. And I think that was accidental. I think there are moments when the camera has to readjust in the frame, and it's basically their in-universe way of saying that, like,
when Bill Hickman, the very famous stunt, the other guy, the hitman,
yeah,
the stuntman Bill Hickman, who will actually go on to work on French Connection, hits a car he wasn't supposed to. It jilts the camera.
Or the burning rubber sequence was not supposed to be in there, where like Steve McQueen looks out of the vehicle and like backs up and fixes the spot. It's because he missed the turn. But the way it's shot is in such a way that even the camera can't keep up because the camera has to jostle around.
Yes, and you always have a stationary object in the middle of the road to show how fast you're going.
Yep.
So you have that. I remember it's a green Beetle, and they show you how fast they're going, and you can hear the sound of them doing over. But you always have to have something stationary. I don't know if I researched this. Actually, they had stunt drivers as pedestrians. Simply know the reactions to how. Because you don't want anybody inexperienced driving cars, but they know if something was going off, how to react to it.
Oh, yeah.
That was interesting. They had stunt drivers as pedestrians on this set.
Yeah, because there's a few times in certain action films where cars will go speeding by and people will whoa, or people will kind of react in an odd way, or you'll have car explosions where people are not running away from it. And it's like, I'd be out of there. The chase itself, I think, when I look at that scene, I always think about how they did it in Death Proof, which is where Kurt Russell's car spins out of control when he gets onto the dirt path, and the whole camera jostles and tries to find itself. There's a confusion level to what's going on, and I think that works out really well because even Frank Bullitt doesn't exactly know what he's doing at this point. He just has to find the guy because now everything he has is riding on this,
Right. And he's fighting the system. He's fighting Robert Vaughn.
One thing, though, a lot of people think that Steve McQueen was behind the wheel of the car the whole time. He was not. He had a regular stunt guy, Bud Ekins, who worked with him a lot, and he also had...
well, he didn't do all these stunts in Great Escape, no matter how much the promotions told him.
Yeah, and he said he really wanted to do as much as he could behind the wheel of the car because he felt he was frustrated that the Great Escape is known for that big bike jump that he didn't actually do.
Right.
And he was frustrated that he was getting all this clout for it, and he was like, well, I want to actually be involved in that way. And it's a joke, and I compared him to Tom Cruise, but it's true. Even Tom Cruise would later on go to be the guy who's like, I'm going to do my own stunts, and if I break my rib cage, we're going to shut down production for a couple months.
If I had to take one minus, to be honest myself, and do true criticism of the movie, it's the love relationship in Frank Bullitt and his girlfriend. Just doesn't seem to jive very well. And it's funny because that kind of is my mistake with Heat. I don't really buy into Robert De Niro's character falling in love with the girl, and
I buy into it as a plot point, but I don't know if the finished product convinces me.
Right, and then and she's one of the only females in the movie, Jacqueline Bisset, and she has the most clumsy lines given to her to speak that it just seems saying those things.
The subplot it feels like an afterthought. It doesn't feel necessary.
Yeah.
And maybe it was to get a lady on a poster or kind of insert one because the only other woman in the movie really is Suzanne Summers, who's a dead body. So it's not really like you can put that on your poster either. So it'd be really tough to actually get a woman into the story like as it was. So they kind of shuffled around because I really think I don't know, the story, my favorite criticism of the movie is that this is my dad's movie, and one day it will be my movie when I have kids. Because it's just a very dad-like film. Slow-paced, except for one scene. But I do think that, the subplot doesn't work. There's a couple of other, subplot relationship things that don't really work all that well. But the film knows when to kick into high gear and have, a more tense sequence. I actually think the shootout in the hotel room is really good. I think the opening shot.
Of Ross. But my favorite part of the movie is not so much this car chase scene. I understand that it's wonderfully crafted. It is the launch pad for all the other great car chase scenes we will see in the future after this. But the ending, the crescendo at the airport, on location with all those people, and then you get the shot through the glass and everything. But then you just end it.
Yeah. That's true, actually, and for that time, of course, those films, more often than not, did not have ending credits. So, this one has, 30 seconds of it. But to, cut to black, show your 30 seconds of credits, and the movie's done, and people are just kind of in the chair still. Yeah. But that's kind of how Heat felt, too. I mean, making the comparisons again to Heat, that was when I noticed the connection between the two films was not so much that they were at the airport, but that they ended up in this tall grass next to the next to the airfield itself. Yeah. And it was like, yep, that's heat all right. There you go. Now we're in it.
Yeah. So, keep the conversation going, please. What do you think about Bullitt? Do you agree with us, disagree with us? Contact us. Message down below. Also, do us a solid by hitting the like and subscribe button and tell your friends about the show as well.
Yeah, hit the heck and subscribe button, everybody. And maybe down below, today's question I'd love to ask, what is your favorite car chase scene in a movie? It might have been The French Connection, a film we've already covered. It might be Bullitt. But if you got one that's other than that, we'd love to hear it, because you know what? There's a good chance we might pick one of those for a future episode.
Yeah, we can't do the French. We already did The French Connection.
Yeah, but there is a sequel. I guess real quick before we go, though, I'd like to ask your thoughts. Yeah. What do you think about the upcoming sequel to Bullitt, directed by Spielberg?
That'd be interesting.
I'm interested. I'm happy it's not a remake.
Right.
It's more of an in-universe new story, and I really like Bradley Cooper, so I'll go with it. But it's a peculiar thing. If
you didn't know, the detective that inspired Frank Bullitt is the same detective that investigated the Zodiac killers. Mm-hmm. The movie Zodiac, Mark Ruffalo
Dave
played.
Toschi,
Yeah, it's the same person inspired, which is really interesting. He never dressed cool in real life. He wore a bow tie and suspenders. Yeah. He never
Zodiac got him right.
Yeah, Zodiac got him right. He never did the turtleneck and sports coat, but he always had a gun holster. But he never looked cool as Steve McQueen does.
Yeah, so maybe we'll have to cover the other half of the coin. We're going to cover the cop that's inspired Bullitt. We'll maybe cover the killer that inspired Scorpio in Dirty Harry.
Dirty Harry,
so
right. Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us. You can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
And you can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. And one thing great about Frank Bullitt, after all the car chases and blows up, he gets his paperwork done.
Yeah. Go do your works.